friends, and welcome back from spring break. Today I have chapter 6 for you of Pugs from the Frozen North. If you're like me, though, you probably forgot what happened in the first 5 chapters after a whole week and a half of not listening. So I'm going to do a quick recap. When we left off, um, Sika and the boy whose name I can't remember right now, Sika and Shen were going to enter the race to get to the Great Northern Race, to get to the palace at the top of the world so that they could have their wish granted. And remember, they're going to have all these pugs pull them, and everyone else has big dogs who are going to pull them. Chapter 6. The town of Snowdovia was built in the same style as the Po of Ice, on stilted platforms along a fjord edge. But, unlike the Po of Ice, it was full of life and bustle. Bunting and strings of lights festooned the houses. The people of the town lined the balconies outside. So you can see all the people lined the balconies outside their homes to watch the adventurers who meant to race to the top of the world come sledding into the fjord. From all over the north they came. True winter had not arrived without warning. Not for people who knew what to look for, not for people who had been eagerly waiting for the first flake of magical snow to fall. So lots of these people were waiting for this winter so that they could race. They had been preparing for weeks, and now that the ice had come, they were ready. At the Limpville Institute of Technology, Professor Shackleton Jones had known about the coming winter by the excited way the northern lights made his particle detectors ping. He was determined to reach at the top of the world using the power of science. Miss Boyd Smith would like that. He and his robot companion, Snowbot, swept into Snowdovia on a carbon fiber sled so strong and lightweight that it was barely there at all. So his sled is so light, that means the dogs or the robot dogs can easily pull him. On a lonely island not far from Snowdovia, Helga Hammerfest had learned of the big freeze by watching the flight of the geese and the way the spiders spun their cobwebs. She had readied her sled and harnessed up her team. No dogs for Helga, just her 2 pet polar bears, Snowdrop and Slush Puppy. She was the local favorite, so she got an extra big cheer when her snow bears came lumbering up to the starting line. Sir Basil Sprout Dumpling heard of the freeze from his butler, Sideplate, who had been keeping watch on the weather forecasts. 10 minutes later they were at the airport, loading Sir Basil's sled and the Pedigree dog team aboard the plane. That means that his dogs are meant for pulling sleds. Sir Basil's father had been the first to reach the top of the world the last time true winter came. He had met the Snow Father and had his wish granted, which was to be ridiculously rich. He'd gone back to England with a fortune in rubies, sapphires, and diamonds. But Sir Basil had spent it all. "If we don't beat these riffraff to the pole, Sideplate," he said as they drew up to the starting line, "I shall have to sell off the old stately home. I mean to win this race, even if I have to cheat like an absolute slime ball." So he's going to do anything he can, even cheating. You can see here the other side, the snow bears that are going to pull her sled. "Yes, Sir Basil," said Sideplate, sadly, holding his bowler hat on tight and wishing he'd worn warmer underwear. "But if I may say so, Sir Basil, I do hope cheating won't be necessary." But Sir Basil wasn't listening. "I say," he cried, for the pink sled that had just pulled up next to him held none other than Mitzi Von Prim, most glamorous of all the racers. How embarrassed her team of huskies looked, clipped like poodles and dyed pink to match Mitzi's stylish racing outfit. She has a very stylish outfit on there, and then you can see her huskies are very fancy as well with their haircuts like poodles. Those 4 were not the only entrants for the race. There were dozens of others, modern sleds with GPS and central heating, age-old sleds of wood and bone, a sled folded out of stiff paper by an origami master from Japan. I don't know how that one's going to work. It's made out of paper. And an inflatable sled advertising poop Begone, pooper scoopers. There was even a sled crewed by two women who were doing the race for charity, dressed in a zebra costume. It took quite a while to get them all sorted out and arranged along the starting line. The overexcited dogs woofed and yapped and howled and sniffed each other's bottoms and started fights. The overexcited race marshal skated to and fro, checking that nobody was cheating and that no dog, or polar bear, had its nose over the line. They had almost finished, and the chief marshal was just cleaning the snow out of her starting pistol and getting ready to fire it, when people standing near the fjord's end began to shout, "Wait, wait! Here comes another!" A ripple of applause spread along the fjord's side as the late arrival headed for the starting line. "Oh my, that looks like young Sitka and her grandpa's old sled," said the chief marshal, scraping away the ice that had formed on the lenses of the binoculars. "But why are those little things pulling it?" "They look like 66 pugs," said her assistant. "Pugs!" said the chief marshal. "Pugs!" said the other racers, turning to stare as Sitka steered the old sled into a gap between Sir Basil's and Mitzi von Prim's, and Shen reined in the eager little dogs. "I say," complained Sir Basil as the marshals came skating over to take the names of the new arrivals, "they've got 66 pugs. That's against all the rules." "And it looks like those dogs are wearing woolly sweaters," agreed Mitzi. "I'm not sure that's allowed." But Hegel Hammerfest, whose sled was on the other side of Mitzi, said, "Well, dear, your huskies are dyed pink and have ribbons in their fur. I don't think you'll find that mentioned in the rule book either." Mitzi blushed, and her poor pink dogs all hung their heads in shame. "And Shackleton Jones's sled is pulled by robot dogs," Helga pointed out. "Those are Woofotron 2000s, and they're my very latest invention," said Shackleton for Jones proudly. "And those 66 little dogs are each about a tenth the size of one of yours," Sir Basil Helga went on, "and you've got 8. So you've got more dog power than these youngsters. What's the matter? Afraid that smart sled of yours won't be as fast as their antique?" "Of course not," said Sir Basil. But he didn't say it very loudly, because Helga was half as tall as him and twice as wide, and he didn't like the idea of getting into an argument with her. Also, her polar bears kept giving him nasty looks. So the chief marshal wrote Shen and Sika's names in her clipboard and stepped onto the little balloon that was waiting on the fjord side to carry her above the starting line. Shen and Sika had left the Po of Ice in a terrible hurry, having quickly packed up the sled with supplies for themselves and the pugs. All the way to Snowdovia they had been worrying that they would be too late. Now Sika turned to Shen and beamed. "We did it!" Shen was not so sure. They were in the race, but it was only the beginning. How could they hope to win it when the other sleds looked so speedy and the other dogs so big and strong? Still, it would be something just to start. The sound of all the dogs filled the frosty air and made him eager to be off. He waved at Helga and said, "Thank you, sir." "She's a lady," hissed Sika. "Is she?" asked Shen. "Yes, I am," said Helga Hammerfest, "but don't worry, I'm always getting mistaken for a man on account of my size and my beard. Most ladies don't care for beards, but I find that mine keeps my chin warm in the frozen north. You should try growing yours, Miss Mitzi." Mitzi von Prim shuddered. "My fur-lined racing coat is all I need to keep me warm," she said. "It's by a very good designer, you know." The chief marshal interrupted, drifting above them in her balloon and shouting out through a huge megaphone. Her words boomed across the ice, and broken bits of them came bouncing back from the frozen hillsides. "Welcome to the Great Northern Race. Now you all know the course north, through the night forest, over the Kraken Deep, and then, by whatever route you want, to the palace." Let's see, here are some of the contestants. I think that's Misty von Prim. "Over to the palace at the top of the world. Good luck! Give your regards to the Snowfather, and may the best sled win." Then she fired her starting pistol. The racers cracked their whips and hollered at their... It's the start of the race. Them cracking or shooting off the gun to say that it's starting, and then you can see down here all of the contestants starting. Hollered at their dogs, and the sled set off, rushing across the ice. There were only some disasters right away, which was only to be expected with so many sleds all starting out together. Some tangled in each other's runners, some of the dog packs stopped running and started fighting. A speedy Russian sled crashed nose first into a hole that opened suddenly in the ice. Sir Basil chuckled and tossed away a can of antifreeze since he made that hole. A small avalanche, triggered by all the noise, came rushing down the fjord side and crumpled the origami sled before it had gone 10 yards. Well, it was made out of paper. The inflatable sled popped when one of the dogs pulling the sled behind it mistook it for a huge runaway sausage and took a bite. Three sleds were knocked over when the chief marshal's balloon fell on. So you can see here are the sleds that went into the ice. You have the one that popped. Here you have the origami one that's crashed. When the balloon fell on top of them and she accidentally punctured it when she fired the starting pistol. But there were others that were away. Shackleton Jones was in the lead with Sir Basil close behind, and Mitzi Von Prim took a daring shortcut between two ragged rocks, and overtook them both. Helga's polar bears galloped lazily along, not bothering to go too fast yet, and right at the back, pulled by their 66 panting pugs, came Shen and Sika. "It's no good!" shouted Shen, clinging on tight as they left the smooth ice of the fjord and started bounding and bouncing over the snowy ground. "They'll be on the top of the world long before us." "Maybe not," said Sika. "It's not just about being fast. What about luck? It will take at least a week to reach the North Pole. All sorts of things will happen along the way. What will you wish for if you get there first? What's your heart's desire, Shen?" "I don't know," said Shen. He had been thinking about it a lot as the sled whisked along. He supposed he ought to wish for a family. He had never had one of his own, except for Bo and Mungbean and Captain Jeggings, who didn't really count. But he didn't want a magic family, just an ordinary one. So he said, "I'm still thinking about it." "I know exactly what I want," said Sika. "I'll ask the Snow Father to make Grandpa well again, to let him live another lifetime, so he'll have another chance to race again next time true winter comes." "Can the Snow Father really do that?" wondered Shen. "Of course he can. He can do anything." Shen looked back and wished that he knew what to wish for. He saw that the fjord and the starting line had already fallen far behind. Zzz went the runners, racing over the snow and ice. Whoo went the wind, whistling around the sled's carved stern, and 66 pugs went yip 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 yip. All the pugs here pulling them and yipping along. And that is the end of chapter 6. I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 7.